So what we're going to look at next is what we call a normal probability distribution, or you guys may have heard of a bell curve. And we're just going to talk first. I'm just going to do a shorter video on the concepts of this. So what our bell curve is, we say it's symmetrical, meaning that it's identical if you put a mirror in the middle. It's a mirror image of itself. So the right side is exactly the same as the left side. Once again, symmetrical, normal, bell curve, they all kind of represent or mean the same thing. So just some concepts to understand. First, the area, the total area underneath our curve, or in this case, our probability, is going to be equal to 1, or 100%. Now, what that actually means, if we think about it being a mirror image, and this is going to come into play here in the future when we talk about the different tables you can use. What that means is that on the left side of our mean, and that's what's in the center of our data, is our mean. Actually, the center of our data is our mean, median, and mode, if you think about it, just looking at the graph, right? And we talked about that. We talked about the shape of our curves in previous clips. But what this is getting at, once again, is that, or is saying, because the whole curve is 100% or 1 as a probability underneath the curve, and it is symmetrical and identical, meaning if we cut it in half, that they're equal to each other. So what that means is that 1/2 of the curve is equal to 50%, or a 0.5 probability, and that the right side is also 50% or 0.5 probability. So we do actually have this idea of our bell curve is symmetrical. So what we're going to talk about is how to standardize our data. And I'm actually going to use examples instead of talking about it because it might get kind of confusing. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to use 3 different methods of solving these. The first one is going to be by using a table that is looks at our curve as only half of the curve, and it'll make more sense once we get to it. And the other table is going to look at the curve as a whole, meaning cumulative. And depending on which one you use, the math that you do to solve for probabilities underneath this curve are going to be slightly different. And then the third way we're going to look at this is by using Excel. And Excel looks at this curve as a whole as well. So we'll do and use those 3 methods to solve. So the other thing that I did want to mention is that what we're going to do for this, we actually don't look at our data as the units that it's in. We're going to do what's known as standardizing it. And what that means is we're going to convert our data into what we call standard deviations, right? So once again, when we get into examples, we will take a look at that, and then we can hopefully it'll either spark some questions, you guys will grasp it afterwards. So what we're going to do at this point, we're actually going to take a look at an example, and we're going to take a look at the example 3 different ways. So please just understand this concept, and then we're going to take this concept to move forward. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me.